Nog and Jake are living together and getting on each other's last nerve. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
You know her. Melissa Longo is also here.
Hello, hello.
There she is with her Eastern European accent. We are joined by writer-producer Marc Zicree of Sliders, The Real Ghostbusters, He-Man, Smurfs, Babylon 5, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. How you doing, Marc?
Great. Life is my my oyster. So
So you pitched a ton of episodes to Star Trek. Few got picked up. All of them were awesome. We're going to be reading some. Today we're going to read one, and it's about Jake and Nog.
Yes.
Woohoo! All right, yes. You see, Melissa, Jake Sisko was a character on Deep, and Nog was a Ferengi. Okay.
Oh, man, imagine that.
Do tell.
All right. So this one was pitched. It appears on October 8th, 1996, right around season 4-ish, it seems like. So this episode is entitled Roommates. The notion that a best friend is someone you'll put yourself on the line for, even if you can't stand him. And also, how can you ultimately accept him being different from you? See his strengths that aren't yours. So here it goes. Nog and Jake are living together and getting on each other's last nerve. Jake can't stand Nog's by-the-book, anal retentive, Starfleet attitude, and Nog's just about had it with Jake's slovenly writer's approach and his writer's block moodiness, and neither really respects the career choice of the other. This is all putting quite a strain on their relationship, and both are wondering if they're outgrowing their friendship, not as alike as they once thought they were. So this sounds very familiar to a part of an episode we had seen, and I wonder if this was right around the same time.
The Ascent. Right?
And again, this is something that might seem more like a B story with some major A story that would link directly, because again, you're looking for things. So you generate a whole bunch of stuff riffing off all the different characters, and then you find ways to marry them together in a way that pleases the showrunners.
Yeah. I don't know. This almost seems like it's an A story because there's a lot to this, especially right now where it continues. At the same time, one of Nog's Starfleet Academy buddies comes aboard the station, just passing through on his first assignment. Jake can't stand the guy, but he's also jealous as Nog now seems to be paying all his attention to Mr. Starfleet, as if he suddenly has a new best friend. Nog is eager to impress the ensign, show him how well he's doing, how he has a great future ahead of him. Marc, you're such a troublemaker. Even put Mr. Starfleet.
That's great.
Yes. And again, you're looking for character conflict. You know, that's what's going to drive a story.
Well, I didn't like him at first sight. As soon as I saw him, I didn't like him. His last name is Eddington, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Okay, so it continues. And these are the kind of things like what Sirach jokingly said, but Marc, as a writer who's pitching an idea, a lot of times you leave these kind of things up to the writer producers to season, to salt with whatever they want to do. And they might take a story like this and say, you know what? Why don't we make it Eddington's son or daughter? Why don't we make it a Benzite? You know, like they add their own flavor to it, and you just kind of give them, see the idea, right?
Because those who are on staff are living, breathing, DS9 day in and day out. They know the show more deeply than I could possibly as a freelancer. And so again, what you're hoping to do is spark their enthusiasm, where all of a sudden, you start working up the story with them. so that so they have ownership of it as well as you. But you have no idea because you could go in and they could say, yeah, it's funny, we've been looking for a really good Jake Nog story. Or they might say, yeah, no, we've got something about Jake and Nog already in the works. So you don't know that necessarily until you're in the room. You try to find out what they're working on, what they have in development, what they want to do, what they don't want to do. Those are questions you ask. And sometimes they'll tell you, and sometimes they won't, depending on who you're talking to and, so forth. But that's why when you go into pitch, you have a variety of foci on, there'd be a Jake story, there'd be a Ben story, but you also have all the other characters where they have a role in it, so that because it is an ensemble. So those are things you're thinking of when you're pitching this kind of story.
Thank you for being the first person on our show to say foci.
Yes.
Okay, so it's going to get a little hairy here. It continues. Then this Starfleet ensign gets into a fight and gets killed by some alien just passing through. Odo and Sisko look into it, find that it seems a fair fight, though that stretches the definition. There's nothing they can do about it. The alien makes a quick exit and heads off for his home world with his compatriots. But Nog cannot let it rest. He's obsessed with avenging his friend's death. Seems totally crazed on the subject. Melissa's totally nodding right now. She's like, that's our Nog. He wouldn't let it go.
Yeah. I was thinking, that's Aaron.
Yeah. Oh, we could picture him doing that for sure.
Yeah.
When Jake questions him on it, Nog finally reveals that this was his only friend at the academy, the only one who stuck up for him. Everyone else was an anti-Ferengi bigot, didn't trust Nog or act with any friendliness, like the first Black at West Point. In some ways, Nog feels this was his only real friend, that everyone else left him in the lurch when the chips were down. Jake takes the slight, the fact that Nog doesn't think he'd be there when the chips are down. Their distance grows. Wow, it gets really deep. So we find out that was his only friend that stood up for him. Jake gets a little annoyed that he's like, what do you mean your only friend? I would be there for you.
Who taught you to read?
Who taught you to read?
Who taught you to read?
So this is also where you say, okay, take it in a direction that you don't see coming, but you're deepening and bringing meaning into it. Not just meaning within the story and within that universe, but meaning within our world too. So it's dealing with racism. It's dealing with issues, larger issues. And the notion of kids growing up and growing apart, kids growing up and finding who they are, kids not sharing with their friends some of the shit they're going through. So it's like so that also has all these interesting relevant issues, and it also deepens your respect for these characters, because when you think of Nog going to the academy and being treated badly and still staying the course, it's like, oh wow, this guy's got depths, this guy's got some backbone, and so this is all because you're trying to deepen these characters without violating what we've seen prior, and also because Nog and the Ferengis were often treated as kind of comedy relief. It's like, let's see a way we can bring respect to that character,
and look down upon. How many times does Worf say, I cannot believe even a Ferengi, or they say even for a Ferengi? There's always that line.
And also there's the issue of we've all had the experience of having best friends, and sometimes those people stay our best friends and sometimes we part, and it's like, okay, let's get into that stuff and unpack that. And also the whole notion that particularly teenagers feel disrespected by adults, like their heartaches aren't as important as the heartaches of adults when they're every bit as important, so we're dealing with a lot of stuff simultaneously.
Can totally picture Aaron playing Nog when he's having the fight, and then he finally just stops and he says, he was my only friend, okay? He just kind of finally relents, and then the story shifts. But it gets even crazier here because it continues. Secretly, Nog seeks out Garrick. He's heard that Garrick was a spy, knows all sorts of things. He wants to be trained in assassination techniques and no questions. Garrick at first refuses, but when Nog offers him a fortune in Latinum, he agrees, though it is an astonishing offer from a Ferengi. Melissa, you're like, what?
Yeah. I that one I'm like, I don't know. That's outside of Nog's character.
Yeah, but okay. So, but
in
again,
my opinion, but
you try stuff and you see what works, you see
Yeah.
what doesn't work. Again, if that had sold as it went on, we would have said, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's but what you're mainly trying to do is surprise the room, because they've heard a million stories. It's like, okay, what's an unusual turn? What's an interesting way of doing it? So, because the question is, okay, how do you resolve this? How do you come to an ending that feels like it's the right ending, out of all the different possibilities? So in that moment, you might say, okay, this isn't like Nog, but let's play this out and see where it's headed, and so that's kind of where you go, so yeah.
Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Then Nog goes AWOL. Jake pieces it together. Nog's gone off to execute his friend's killer. Jake has to pursue Nog and get him back before he's brought up on charges. He takes Quark along and guilts Garrick into coming as well. They manage to catch up with Nog, but not before he's gotten trapped by the bad guys. All our guys are in the soup, with seemingly no way out. At this point, Nog's Starfleet training helps a bit, but not enough to save them. What ultimately turns the tables is Jake's abilities as a writer to see things from someone else's viewpoint, to imagine, to work out alternative scenarios or outlandish strategies, perhaps even doing some, okay, Mark, you're going to have to tell me how to pronounce this word. Scheherazade?
Scheherazade. That's 1001 Nights. That's the Arabian Tales, So
See, and I bet the writer's room wouldn't recognize that reference, but I have no idea what that is.
Scheherazade was going to be murdered at dawn, but she told this guy stories, the Sultan or whatever, stories, so that he would be so intrigued at the cliffhanger that he would let her live another day for 1001 nights, until finally he fell in love with her and they were married and he didn't kill her. And so she was part of his harem. And so that's Scheherazade. Yeah, the writers in the writer's room would have known that reference.
Interesting. So perhaps even doing some Scheherazade type thing, keeping the bad guys entranced by his storytelling. In the end, our guys get back safely to Deep Space Nine. Both Jake and Nog move from hating each other's habits and career choices to a respect for what they've learned and gained, and an acceptance that they can be different from each other. So the other interesting thing, and I know the part that Melissa was really listening for, is that Nog makes kind of a decision, okay, maybe assassination's not the way, but my Starfleet training can help us out in a way. And then Jake also uses his training as a writer, and it seems as though they learn something and an understanding is made.
Yeah, and the reason you bring in Quark and Garrick is just because it can't just be a story about two characters, because it's an ensemble show. And so you're looking for ways to open it up. And also the idea that Nog is desperate to avenge his friend's death, but he's out of his depth. He's in over his head, and Jake has to basically save him. And that's that notion. And Jake pursues him because he realizes, because he does care. And ultimately, so their relationship, their friendship becomes strengthened by this adventure. And this is, again, the parallel of when kids go off to college, best friends leave and each goes off to like college or whatever. And it's like, well, can they come back together? Can they find mutual ground, even though their lives are going in separate directions? And so there was a lot of stuff there. And, it's it's a fun story, and it has meaning. And also, I really like the idea of Nog confessing that he's being treated badly at Starfleet, the Starfleet Academy, because of racism, that they don't believe a Ferengi could possibly be a Starfleet officer. And so I find that, because again, you don't want to tell stories that are just empty. You want to tell stories that come back to our world. So the whole purpose of science fiction, or at least the best purpose of science fiction, is to resonate in the present. So that's So there you go. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I like the episode.
I was just watching Sirach. I knew you had something to say. I was watching.
I had a lot of thoughts in my head when I was hearing all of this, but I like the episode.
Yeah.
I would like, though, if Nog were experiencing something in Starfleet, I would like it to raise the level of consciousness and awareness to a degree in which he would be taking action to neutralize that kind of behavior, because it's not reflecting good on Starfleet if there is this level of bigotry or racism inside of it, and they would have to find ways to deal with this if it was true that it was a mass group of people kind of treating him in this kind of a way. Yes. And so then I would expect him to take some initiative, like, okay, we're going to pass this. I'm going to file a suit, or I'm going to raise these concerns to higher officials or something.
Well, and he would definitely reach out to Cisco too, because he is a mentor and somebody that he looks up to greatly. So
and again, this could also be an issue of Nog doesn't want to share this with others, and Jake is the one who says, no, we're going to do something about this. We're going to action. And he goes to Ben, and then Ben, takes action, and stuff changes. But also the whole notion is that it's things change when people decide to change them. It starts with and so, I mean, in other words, you more and more people come to see that something is an injustice. More and more people come to correct that injustice. It's like there's a lot you can do with this. But the main thing I wanted to show Jake also in a very dynamic and powerful way, that it isn't just like, oh, he's just coming up with these little stories or whatever. It's like, no, a writer can have effect in the world, and why Jake's pursuits are as valid as Nog's, and so that was also interesting, and but that's another one that they went next.
I could totally picture Jake having that conversation with him, though, just saying, that's part of Earth's history, and it needs to be, it's a reason we call it part of our history, is because cultures need to get past that, or something. He's got some kind of depth, brings it up to his dad, of course. But I can also see someone like Garrick's, giving a typical Garrick line, everybody deserves to be lied to equally, or something like that. like some kind of memorable Garrick line in there.
Yeah, and also this relates to, as we grow up, there are bad choices and good choices, and sometimes we're not sure which is which, and we're ruled by our emotions, and we can go down some roads that are very, very, very self-destructive. So, but another thing about pitching, by the way, is it's excuse me, heavy lunch, but that's a joke. But the other part of it is it's total, when you work up stories and pitch, it's total commitment, zero attachment, because one of the biggest sins in pitching, one of the absolute, I've seen people do this, and it's such a huge mistake, is when they say no, it's no. You never try to argue it. So for instance, if they said next, and you go, no, wait, this could be a great Noggin job. No, they've already said no. And then it's no is a no. You continue to the next one. That's how it works. And you just have to be cool with that. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter if it's a good story or a bad story. It matters that whether or not they're going to buy it, because, these are stories that I came up with, and you can see that they're fun stories, and I'd watch these episodes and all of that, but you just read the room, and you
sounds like
Marc. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it sounds like, Marc, part of being, a little more affable, and if they say no right away, you just let it go, is because you also are pitching yourself as somebody that they'd like to work with, somebody they'd like to call back. somebody they'd like to reference in the future. And that all depends on how easy you are to work with and how much you respect and value their time.
Also, none of these people were strangers. I mean, for instance, when I was story editing Friday the 13th series, which was my first staff job, I was on the Paramount lot, and this is just as Star Trek The Next Generation was starting up. So I knew all of those people. I mean, I'd worked with Hans Daimler and Richard Manning on Beyond Reality as the executive story editor. So I knew Hans and Ricky, I knew Ira Bear, I knew Brannon and Ron Moore and all these guys. And so so when I would go into pitch, and Michael Piller, after we worked together, and only after we worked together, we discovered we were second cousins, which I hadn't known at the time, nor had he. But so it wasn't like going into a room of people you don't know. It was like going into a room of people you knew and liked. And so it was basically seeing if there was a way to get this all to work, and you never knew going in what was going to score and what wasn't. You would just bring your A game as always, and then go from there.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
Ryan and I are second cousins as well, which is kind of crazy. But,
everybody already guessed.
But
that's kind of obvious.
But Shabak, you're the good-looking one.
Everybody guessed that too.
No, I don't think so. but it's funny. While we were talking about this episode and the roommate fight, a thought crossed my mind, and that was the People's Court. Jake versus Nog, kind of like suing each other in court.
Oh,
dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
that would have been a fun episode. Nobody,
arguing it out in front of court. This guy took he locked the door, took my furniture. All that, just the whole beef. So I actually thought of that while we were talking about the episode. Something, whatever it is.
People like stories.
Yeah.
But that's funny. It's like the writers created this playground that everybody, including us 25 years later, want to play in.
Yes, yes. And freelancing was a wonderful opportunity because most shows, but back then, a lot of shows, they'd have like maybe 11 episodes done in-house and 11 with freelancers, and those might be completely overhauled by the writers on staff, or not, depending. But because Michael Piller had broken into television on a spec script for I can't remember which show it was, he had an open door policy, and no other show had that. No other. Star Trek was the only. Those were the only shows that allowed spec scripts, and so many people, that was their first sale. And Ron Moore and Brandon Braga, many of these people got in through spec scripts that they'd written. So that was a great opportunity that was not available on most shows.
Wow,
amazing.
Well, we have to run now, but there was a lot of good stuff in this one. There was a lot there. It went in so many different directions just when we thought we knew. And Mark, like you said, you're trying to surprise the writers and give them something that they hadn't gotten before. So whether they take that idea completely or whether it just kind of jars something in their creativity. Very cool. And thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Marc Zicree. This was a fun one. Let us know in the comments, everybody, what you thought of this, what you would change, what you would add, 10 plus, A++, let us know. And see you next time. Until then, always remember the 7th rule.